Assalamu alaikum jamiyan wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. A very warm welcome to all our dear brothers, sisters and our wider Safiya TV family. Welcome to the show where we discuss some of the philosophies and practices regarding Hajj itself. Now I'm joined here today, and it's always an honor, by our dear respected alim, our Hajj expert, Syed Raza Rizvi. And together, both yourself and me, together, we're going to go through some of the most important aspects of Kaffaraat, meaning the penalties, and how you can rectify and potentially, per se speaking, save your Hajj. So without any further delay, I'd like to welcome the Syed to the show. Sayyidina, Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
How are you today?
Alhamdulillah.
So dear Syed, I'll just explain to our dear viewers that they're tuning into today's episode, which is going to focus specifically on the penalties, the Kaffaraat. Now before we begin, dear Syed, again, I would like to emphasize not only to our viewers, but the word Kaffaraat has many negative connotations to it. When you mention this to someone, they think that you're trying to, hurl some abuse at them. That, you're trying to say, I'm a sinner or something. Please, could you explain what does the term Kaffaraat mean and its rationale? Why has Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala legislated it?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. When we talk about the Kaffaraat or the penalties, what we mean is that if you've made mistakes, then there is a way of rectifying your mistake. And sometimes even if you have sinned, then there are things you can pay towards having forgiveness.
Yes.
And even I would rather pay a penalty for a sin to have forgiveness than to have punishment for it.
So it's like it's helping you in a sense,
It is helping you. It is basically, so if a person misses out a fast, then they have to feed 60 people.
Yes.
So that way Allah helps, in the penalties, He helps poor people. Now, there could be different types of penalties. So there's a whole chapter in our jurisprudence. And if you look at the Hajj itself, it is one of the most difficult chapters of our jurisprudence. And the Kaffaraat or the penalties of Hajj is the most difficult part in Hajj itself.
Okay.
So there are more than 20, more than 25 prohibited things while in the state of ihram, and each one may have a different kafara, a penalty. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has placed penalties for people to rectify themselves. And sometimes many people look at the penalty and they say, okay, I'll be more careful, so I don't have to pay a penalty. But the penalty is generally helping some of the people who are deserving. Now, if you look at the chapter of penalties, there may be, you have to make 60 fasts, for example, for something, or 3 fasts, feed 10 people, or giving clothing for 10 people, giving a goat in the way of Allah, or just repenting,
Yes.
or giving a cow in the way of Allah for the poor people,
Yes.
or a camel in the way of Allah. So the penalties may be different, and the whole concept of a penalty is to first of all, warn you, don't make a mistake because there may be consequences. And secondly, if you do make a mistake, then you can rectify it through a penalty.
So it's almost like a remedy, at the same time a cure as well. So
Yes.
it's like, a stopper to say, be careful, if you do it, this is what happens. So have that in the back of your mind. Thank you, dear Syed. But in this respect then, regarding Hajj itself specifically, you mentioned it's such a big area and it's very technical. But when is the time to pay the Kaffaraat? If for example, God forbid, you'd make one of the prohibited acts, when is the time to pay it? Can you pay it in the Holy Land of Makkah, or can you pay some when you're back in your own hometown?
If you look at the Holy Quran, so some of them, for example, Allah says you have to fast 10 days. So 3 days while you're there, وَالسَّبَعَةٌ إِذَا رَجَعْتُمْ. When you return, then the 7 you will fast on your return. So some of the penalties, for example, or some of the major mistakes or sins you may perform there may even nullify your Hajj. But some of those mistakes may be only with penalties. And some of those penalties may be applicable while you're there, and some when you return.
So it really just depends on the nature of what the act was.
Yes.
Okay. And in this respect, they say the place of performing the kafara, again, is it just only in the Holy Land, or can you come back to your hometown and perform them?
Yes. Some of the penalties you can actually come back to your hometown, or you can send off to another Holy Land where there are poor people or something. that you actually say, okay, can you give a goat or a sheep or a cow as a penalty on my behalf in so and so place. You don't have to do it in Mina. You can actually come back and do it in another place.
Okay, because I asked that because what I've seen in the past is that some people, because of their financial situation, they might not be able to afford certain rates. So they instead then pay back, like in the East or so on, in a place where they generally tend to afford more. So that's why I was going to ask that, are these kafaras, one-stop shop, or can they be spread across?
Some of them you may have to do in...
you have to in the holy city as well. Okay.
But most of them you can actually perform in another city.
Sure. And they say it's similar to this is, again, because Makkah is quite hot, especially in the summer, people tend to, without knowingly, take some shade. What would be the kafara in that sense then?
Now, if a person during the day, because it's hot, takes a shade intentionally, if it is unintentional, people sit down in a car and travel, then it's, they forgot. Otherwise, it's only a sheep, but it is a sheep. So you have to give a penalty. So if you intentionally travel in a shade during the day, for men, not for women, then they have to give a sheep or a goat.
Then would tents include this as well? Because when you're in a tent, for example, on the day of Arafah itself, isn't that shade? Or doesn't that count?
You're not traveling, you're resting.
Because so your resting is different. Okay.
Yes.
And in this respect, they say, if, for example, a person just puts his hand out as a shade because it's just so hot, again, would that count as a shade?
No, that's not.
Okay.
That's fine.
Okay, so we're not that strict there, okay, in that sense. Okay. They say in terms of then the kafara in general, now we're speaking, is it possible to delay it given the Hajj, the nature of Hajj itself? Can I delay my kafara until later?
Most of the kafarat you can delay, but some of the kafarat you cannot. And if you look at the whole chapter of kafarat in Hajj, there's a whole chart that says that if these are all the different things that you must not do, and for each one of them there may be a penalty. So some of the penalties may be minor, and some of the penalties may be that you have to fast, or so you have to give a sheep or a cow, or so depending on what. So most of the penalties you can actually return and give in the form of animals, but some of the penalties are to be performed while at the Holy Land.
Otherwise, it would affect your Hajj overall.
It may affect.
It depends.
It all depends.
Okay.
So some of the actions may be quite severe in the sense that they may nullify your Hajj. So I don't want to go into some of those things. I don't want to make people frightened of the ibadat itself. But it is very important to remember that the Hajj itself is a very delicate ibadat, very important ibadat, difficult ibadat, financial ibadat, and it has all the different aspects of ibadat in one place, in one go.
Yes, so such as the salah, the patience. Sometimes you haven't eaten for many, many long hours. And then you still have to control your emotions, your anger, and the like.
Yes.
So it's all in one, essentially.
In one.
And that's probably why the reward is so much as well then, right?
Yes.
But in this respect then, they say, a personal question, if you would allow me to, in your experience with many people traveling, if people have fallen into kafaras and they've become very depressed or very sad, what's the best advice you would give to them?
There's a hadith that al-hajjul mabrur laysa lahu jaza'un illa al-jannah.
Yes.
One perfect Hajj, or one Hajj which is performed properly, there is no reward for it except for the paradise itself.
SubhanAllah.
So no matter how many penalties you have, no matter how difficult it may be, no matter how tired you may be, I promise you, no matter who you are, once you go through such a difficult ibadat, as soon as you finish, you feel that, oh my God, what did I go through? And you want to go back.
Yes.
So it is a feeling that you have to experience yourself to be able to learn and understand. It is not a feeling that I can, in words, explained to you,
Certainly.
or transferred to you, or installed in you.
Certainly.
It is something that you have to experience.
And I guess that adds to the whole motivation to go to Hajj itself, right?
Yes.
Thank you once more, dear Syed, for your time and your knowledge, and for taking our questions on this technical side, on this technical topic. Dear viewers, I hope you found that very useful as well, inshallah. And please do join us for our next episode, where we're going to be focusing now. So we've left Makkah, we're going to be now traveling to the holy city of Medina, and we'll be mentioning some of the mustahabat, some of the recommendations, and some of the a'mal which you could perform in the holy city of Medina. So you, again, like I always say, you don't want to miss that episode. Please remember us all in your du'as. Until next time, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.